Brand new video, brand new code, and of course, you can find the code attached to this video. Now, as you can see, unfortunately, this website is not as spectacular and as beautiful as our course project, but it will help us a lot to understand the general behavior of the position property. As I said, I want to focus onto the static value in the beginning, and then especially onto the fixed value. Now, what we can see right here is basically, if we inspect it, an HTML element right here. That's kind of the wrapper around it with some margin. We will see why this margin is important. Then we have a body element. Inside this body element, we have a div. I gave it the class parent, and as it's named parent, it has some children. It has 3 children with an equal styling. I just gave it some example names like navigation bar, background image, and features. So this is just examples, as I said. The important thing is that we have this general structure right here. From a code perspective, it's also not really spectacular. As you can see, we have this parent class right here, which wraps these 3 divs, as we saw it on the website already. And in the CSS code, we basically have the HTML selector right here, where I applied some basic styling. Don't be confused because of this height of 2000 pixels. I just want to make sure that we can scroll on our website, therefore I applied this. And then we have the body with also some default stylings applied. You know all these properties already. And the same thing is true for the parent. So this wrapping div that we have, and then the 3 divs inside our parent element right here, or our parent class right here, also with some basic styling. So nothing right here has to do with the position property so far. And I think it's time to change that. And I want to focus onto these 3 divs right here to show you how the position property works. For that, I will not start with the position property though, but with this top, right, bottom, and left properties that we saw. So these properties that allow us to change the position of our elements in the document flow. Because at the moment, keep that in mind, we have the default positioning value applied. And the default value is static. And if we now add another selector right here, which could be parent child 1, so I'm referring to this element right here now, this navigation bar element. And if I now say I want to change the position by top 100 pixels, let's just assume that we want to do that. And if I reload the page, you can see that nothing happens. And that's the first important thing. All the positioning changes we want to apply right now are only possible if you apply a value that is different from static, so different from the default value. Keep that in mind. However, if we get rid of that top property now and change it to position fixed, as I said, the value I want to focus on, and now go back to our website, well, we can see that the behavior already changed. Actually, we see 2 interesting things. The first thing we see is, of course, that the width of the element decreased significantly. It almost looks like an inline element now. We will talk about that in a few seconds. Let's focus on to the maybe second thing that we can see right here. Because the element now is basically not existing for the other elements anymore. As we can see it, the second element, so our background image, that's what it's called, element, now overtook this position the navigation bar element had. We can still see the navigation bar element right here, but the background image is exactly at the same position. And this happens because by applying position fixed to this element, to the navigation bar element, we took it out of the actual document flow. This simply means that for all the other elements right here, this navigation bar element is no longer existing because we applied this declaration to it. Now, what about the width now? Did we create an inline element right here now? Well, let's quickly find that out by going back right here and maybe changing the width to, let's say, 400 pixels. Because as we learned throughout the course already, for inline elements, changing the width has no impact. So if we do that and reload it, we can see that the width of our element changed. Therefore, we did not create an inline element now. We basically have an element which behaves like an inline block element actually. So that's what we saw so far. We took the element out of the document flow and we changed the general behavior from a block level element to a rather inline block element style. However, the element is called navigation bar. How could we now create a navigation bar with this position property that we applied? Well, if we now go back and maybe remember these top, bottom, left, right properties again, maybe these have an impact right now. So if I add top and let's say 100 pixels right here, let's see what happens. As you can see, the element moved down a bit, but so far it's not clear what this element refers to. That's this positioning context I talked about on the slide. Let's maybe change the value to 0, because with 0, we should immediately see what this element depends of. As we can see, the element basically seems to be sticked kind of near the border of the HTML element, but kind of. It doesn't exactly fit. Let's go back right here and let's now remove the margin from our element. Maybe this makes things clearer. Let me reload that. And I think now it becomes evident. As you can see, the navigation bar is not dependent on the HTML element. So right here, this is the HTML element. But if we scroll down, we can see that this element now basically has the viewport as the positioning context. So basically, the position of this element only depends on the viewport. I can prove this to you if I go back and change top to bottom, for example. Oops, not like that, like this. So if you have a look at it right now, you can see that now this bar is sticked to the bottom. Same thing can of course be applied if we change it to left or right. So the important thing now is that this now always refers or relates to the viewport. And that's of course really cool, because if we use that knowledge now and not only at left 0, but also top 0, then we can see that we have this navigation bar already added in the left top part of the screen. And if we now also increase the width to 100%, because we would like this navigation bar to occupy the entire space available, like that, well, then this should look fine. And it actually does, but right here we have a problem, because we can see that the border is kind of located outside of our viewport. Now, we had such an issue already. Do you know how we can solve this now? Well, you probably know. We can simply add the box sizing with a value of border box right here. Max already explained that to you, so if we now reload the page, we can see that our navigation bar is positioned perfectly and always sticks to 100% of the width of our viewport. So that's how easy it is to add a navigation bar, a fixed navigation bar, to our website. Before we apply it to our project though, there is one more thing that I would like to show you. Because I talked about inline elements already, and so far we only used block level elements. What would happen now though if I change the div, so the navigation bar div, to an inline element, a span for example? Let's quickly do that right here. So we will change the div to a span right here and right there. I'll just change this one because, as I said, this is the one that, well, is our navigation bar. And now I will change the div right here also to a span because I want to have this background color right here also on the span. And if I reload the page now, we can see that the background image and the features lost their styling. That's just because we changed right here the selector to a span, but the navigation bar still sticks to the top. So that's also important to keep in mind. You can apply this positioning property no matter if you have a block level element or an inline element. Let's change it back to a div though, because I think that's the way it's supposed to be in our case. So let's reload it. Yeah, this looks fine now. So this was the theory partially applied. Let's now jump back to our project and see how we can add this fixed navigation bar to it. Let's do this in the next video.